good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to Saxley Farm in Hampshire, situated between Stockbridge and Andover, on wonderful Andover Series soils. Delighted to be joined by Matthew Reed of John Reed Farming and Host Farmer. Very kindly hosts this trial, which we co-run with Syngenta each year, and Mike Tufnell of CS Commodities Solutions, very active in the malting barley market, accounting for over 60% of the UK malting barley exports, and also very active in the UK domestic market. So we're here today really just to discuss malting barley, all things malting barley. We couldn't run our trial, which we do every year, unfortunately, because of the current constraints around COVID-19. So we thought we'd try and encapsulate everything that's going on, and there is a lot going on in the malting barley world, with both Matthew, the farmer, Mike, who is responsible for a lot of the market and the steer we all get, and I'll try and contribute myself as and where possible. Okay. Matthew, been another very interesting year in the farming calendar. Obviously, record rainfall from September through to February, and then we were plunged straight into a drought. What's your take on how things are looking?
Things look remarkably well, considering what we've come through.
Yeah.
I hesitate to say it's unusual, because it's almost a replica again of last year, where we went through a very wet autumn and winter and straight into a dry spring. We've done it again this year.
Yeah.
So it seems to be becoming a more normal weather pattern, but who knows? But yes, we literally, it stopped raining one day, and we didn't have any more rain for the best part of 2 months.
No.
We went straight through spring drilling in one go in the space of 2 weeks,
Yeah.
with beans and then spring barley.
But the legacy of the winter with wet chalk and aquifers that are full, that must have helped on these classic malting barley chalk soils.
Absolutely, it's great. The chalk is a fantastic sponge and a fantastic reservoir of moisture. So, particularly for winter crops that have got roots down into it. But the spring crops, again, they've got down into it and they held on very well. We managed to conserve quite a lot of moisture at drilling. And the crops have looked very well from the get-go, really.
And of course, we had that rain, didn't we, in late April, early May, which didn't go well. Actually, in a sort of semicircle around this area, we got it, and a lot of others didn't, which really must have set the crops up well.
Absolutely, we were very fortunate. Just to the point where the crops were needing some moisture, they got it, and from then on, really, they've gone from strength to strength.
Yeah.
And I'd say at the moment, spring barleys and spring beans as well.
Yeah.
All the spring crops really do look as good as we would ever expect.
Yeah.
And have a lot of potential at the moment.
So we can see here, Matthew, in this big block of the trials are in a lovely block of Laurier. How did you establish that?
So this was drilled with our Missouri drill, which is a, I hesitate to say the word direct drill, because there's a lot of controversy about what a direct drill really is, but it's a strip till drill. Yeah. And a lot of people are very familiar with what it is. And so that is very good at conserving moisture. Which is great in a spring, particularly springs in a dry spring like this. Yeah. If you can get it and roll it behind it very quickly, we keep the moisture. And that helps the crop obviously get away and get established, particularly when it's dry.
Yeah. And these dry springs do seem to be becoming a bit of a theme, don't they? Which, on your chalk soils, you're in as good a place, or better place than most people, provided out.
Absolutely. Our boys' land, as people like to refer to it, has this wonderful sponge of chalk underneath, which really does provide a fantastic, if we can get it filled up over the winter, it provides a fantastic reservoir of moisture for the crops if they can get their roots down into it.
And we can see that now in the chalk streams, the aquifers are full, so you've got great, once they get their roots in,
absolutely,
as you say, the sort of sponge-like action, they're away.
Yeah, they're away, and they can really then make the most of this fantastic weather that we're getting at the moment, and use the sunshine and the moisture they've got. And so, a lot of potential at the moment, I think.
Well, fingers crossed that we get it from here into there and away from there fairly smoothly.
Well, that's your part.
Yeah, exactly. Delighted to be joined, as I say, by Mike Tufnell, CS Commodities Solutions, very, very active in the export market, which is absolutely vital to malting barley growers in the south of England. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, we have our barley is sought after, as we've seen this last season, in mainland Europe.
Yeah, we sent last year and last few years 350,000 tonnes of malting barley out to the near continents, Belgium, Germany, all looking for the quality of our barley. And again, they'll be looking for it this year, although we've got marketing challenges that we can discuss.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on the fact that we've had a very, very challenging farming calendar with the record rainfall. We're left with an enormous spring barley crop, which no doubt after the very dry spring is going to throw up some pretty variable and regional results. But by and large, it looks to me we're going to have a mountain of barley to cope with, aren't we?
We've got about 42% extra area of spring barley going into the ground, even if we're not quite up to sort of average yields. We're going to have a barley crop going up to about 8 million tonnes, maybe just slightly below.
Yeah.
Of that, we'd expect with a reasonable pass rate of malting barley, at least sort of 800,000 tonnes of malting barley surplus that we would want to try and ship.
And the whole legacy of COVID-19, we were looking at a very challenging year. We looked at a challenging autumn last year when we were all up against it to export vessels before 31st of December. We were looking at that again, coupled with a big barley crop, and then of course comes COVID-19, which malting barley has really suffered on the back of that.
COVID-19 has hit the beer industry, which has hit the brewers, which has come straight through to the maltsters. So in the UK we're about 50-50 on trade, off trade, so there has been a real impact domestically. As well as throughout the world. Europe as a whole is an exporter of malt around the world, and that demand is not going to be there.
No.
So what we've seen is old crop carried into the new crop by the maltsters, and so that demand that we would have had early on has been taken up by the old crop. And we've then got a marketing problem with the Brexit cut-off again, which you mentioned at the end of the year, at 31st. So we have effectively at the moment got to ship our barley before the 31st of December, depending on what happens with the outcome of Brexit. Of which my personal view is we won't know until more or less the 11th hour.
They'll take it to the wire, I should think, won't they? But as you say, that's what will be ultimately. So that really, we're here talking about malting barley. We specialise in malting barley as a company, but obviously feed barley then becomes very key to these markets. We've seen a huge discount from feed wheat down to feed barley. That's been a very movable feast. Our expectations of both demand and therefore premiums are not high. How do you see all that panning out?
At this moment, premiums for malting barley if you get a sort of £15 premium, you may be happy with that. I can't see it that we're going to expect any more than that. We may see it being less than that. The overall picture for feed barley is that there will be demand into North Africa. We've got a situation where the French could be exporting a lot of barley to China, which will free up some of their normal export homes in North Africa for our feed barley. A word of sort of caution on that is that we can't sell that yet because the demand into North Africa demands lower moisture limits than we're perhaps normally used to here. So you'd want a 13.5, 14, max 14.5 moisture, which at this stage we can't guarantee.
Who knows? We will get a dry harvest. So, as you say, and we'll come back to that whole sort of feed barley situation, but we have potentially this mountain of barley to move. We've got a big carryover of old crop to new crop. We spent a lot of March and April working, hand in hand with maltsters both here and on the continent, and I think everyone has behaved fantastically well. We've sorted out malting barley contracts, we've rolled things, we've moved a lot of barley down into the West Country as feed, and that, we've used, I think, if you look at it, potentially, we will use 1 million tonnes more of feed barley in domestic compound rations than we did 2 years ago. So the compounders, with the price of wheat and this discount, will look more and more towards feed barley, will they not?
Feed barley at a £30 discount, even at a £25 discount, the compounder is going to max out on as much feed barley as they can compared to wheat. Yeah, it's cheap. You then need to look at how it compares to corn, see if it can buy some more space into the compound ration. But there is only a finite amount of barley that they can get in. So we're then looking for those export markets on barley, which traditionally we would be sending huge amounts to Spain. Unfortunately for us this year, Spain has had an absolute bumper barley crop. So Spain don't want our barley.
No.
So we are looking for those North Africa ones, which are typically the lower moisture.
Yeah. Which again, we've got deep water ports, we've got Portbury, Southampton, Tilbury. So, we can do that, as we've shown this year, haven't we? In excess of 1 million tonnes of barley has gone out, but we're going to have to do that again next year, aren't we? When as you say, we know what we've got and what we're dealing with, and then when the tenders and that market starts opening up.
Absolutely.
So I think one of the great positives I think I take from this industry, and primarily from this area as well, is the high quality of the malting barleys, both winter and spring, that we produce, that farmers can produce, and the whole array of markets that we can tap into. And I think, Mike, that was very clear last year, where it was key, that there was a latent demand for quality English barley, wasn't there? Which, I don't know, explain to us where that sort of fitted into the market. Was it compensating for lower quality in other areas?
So last year we had sort of a Brexit situations at various stages.
Yeah.
So we do have to try and fit our marketing in to compete with the other surplus areas in Europe. So you've got France this year and Denmark that both have extra malting barley. So we're always competing to get in there. So it is where we can be the sort of cheapest of the best barley. So there's quality and then there's price, and we've got to match them both up to get into those end users. And with our currency the way it is at the moment, which is helping us, we are actually able to compete into the near continent.
Yeah. And variety-wise on that, the Pepino is sort of waning now. We've got Splendor coming through, which may or may not be a straight Pepino brewing replacement. But Laureate and Planet are the two key varieties that we grow within the UK. They're both very, very high yielding, very good varieties, which are both in demand, both domestically and within Europe. But Europe can sometimes get all the Planet it needs out of mainland Europe.
So Europe grows a lot of Planet in France, a lot of Planet in Scandinavia. So a lot of the maltsters in Europe will want to have something other than Planet. Pepino has been a favourite because it's been a good alternative. Laureate is coming through, and for certainly people in the Netherlands, Belgium, we'll see them taking Laureate. Germany, it isn't part of their Berliner programme, but again, there will be some access to that market, is my feeling. But and again, maybe another access point to the German market, which is where we have competed, even going up the Rhine, because of being cheap enough compared to inner France at one point. the German market, their beer industry allows no glyphosate tolerance at all. And so we have to be very careful that we don't supply them with anything that's had a pre-harvest glyphosate.
Which really,
sorry, Mike, that's a pre-harvest. Is that a maximum residue, or it's not allowed to have glyphosate on it at all?
They're looking for a very, very low number on it. So effectively, it's not put on. You get one truckload or two truckloads going into a cargo, that will put you over the residue limit that Germany accept. So it is that tight on tolerance.
So effectively, it's no pre-harvest.
It's no pre-harvest for that market.
which I don't think many farmers are using it, are they? I think it's a very small percentage. I mean, different years with secondary tillering and green tram lines, people might be tempted to do it, but in my experience, I think it's not a widely used practice, certainly from the sort of, north of England down.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very different in the north, but down here, no, I don't think so. It's not something we routinely do at all. It would be very, very rare that we would do it. And like you said, I think it's probably quite a rare thing. And I think particularly people know that it's closing off the market.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a good market, and it's something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
Particularly where barley's bulked up, you really don't want that, that going into the bulk. Any market that we close off in this season, when we've only got effectively 3 months to market into Europe until we know about Brexit, we want to be able to market everywhere we can.
And going forward, subject to tariffs, WTO, etc., which I am sure we will find a way. I'm convinced we'll all find a way. It's in everybody's interest to find a way. These are the markets. May not be a premium on a premium for it, but it gets us a secure market, isn't it? If we can start adding value and getting groups together to fulfil that sort of need.
Yeah, I think it's becoming one of the demands around the globe and around things of barley.
And Mike, just looking a bit further afield, there's well-publicised sort of Australia-China fallout, and obviously barley was quite a big part of that. What effect's that going to have for us over here in Europe or in the UK?
So this is a good news story for European barley, particularly when we're exporters of malt. Perhaps with the coronavirus, we're losing markets for malt. France, who has approval to go into China, will take up a lot of the business into China, which in turn will free up some of the traditional French markets for the UK barley, particularly in feed. But again, some of the malting barley as well may find its way in. So the Chinese are looked to come for feed barley, winter malting barley, spring malting barley. So this could be a huge boost to what is an oversupplied situation in the total of Europe.
And potentially they could take some of that this season from France?
They will be starting this season to go from France. It's a shame that we haven't got quite the protocol to put it into China direct. Although we've got a protocol, we have a problem on wheat seed brome that will stop us getting in there.
The French clearly don't have that problem, so
exclusive to us. And Matthew, spring barley as part of your ongoing, I mean, the farming industry is going to change fairly radically, you would think, over the next few years with all the different changes that are coming through. But spring barley, is that in your long-term plans?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A range of cropping. We can't, particularly on our soils, a spring crop works really well. And it's enabled us not to suffer with the same sort of blackgrass problems that we've seen elsewhere in the country by having a spring crop in there. The brome issue is a little bit of an issue, but again, that's not necessarily directly at spring barley. That's an issue of the way we're moving forward with cultivation and things. But yes, a range of cropping. So, and with the loss of oilseed rape as well, other crops in the rotation. And spring barley works really well down here on the chalk. In these soils, it's a great crop. It yields well, and in the right years produces, cracking malting barley. And if it's not going to make malting barley, it can still produce the yield. So it works very, very well.
Could you just the yields you sort of normally expect, and from this year what you might expect at this stage of the?
I think if we're trying to head for the distilling market, where it's a slightly lower N input, we're probably around the 7-ton mark, maybe just a little bit more than that in a good year. Where we've pushed it for feed, we could be hopefully heading towards sort of 8 ton plus in a good year. So there's a little bit of difference, and there's a decision to be made early season as to whether you're going to go down the distilling malting route or whether you're going to go for the straight feed route. And hopefully in most years the malting route is the sensible route down here.
Certainly has been up to now, hasn't it? I think this year, the odds have been against us, haven't they? From the word go, you name it, it seems to sort of knock us back. Now we're all used to a lot of challenges. These highly volatile markets are here to stay, aren't they? But one would expect if we get a normal, whatever normal is, autumn, that we're going to be looking at a much more a much reduced spring barley area for crop 21, aren't we?
Certainly some of the spring barley that was drilled on the heavier land after the very wet winter, I think is probably going to struggle a little bit, particularly where they weren't lucky enough to get any rain early in the crop season. And that will probably make the non-traditional spring barley growers will probably think again about whether it really is a suitable crop for them. They didn't have a lot of choice this year, they didn't have wheat in the ground. But in a more normal year, I suspect that we'll see the acreage come back to something approaching what we've seen in the past. And it's working on the farms that it's traditionally worked on.
Yeah, for sure. It carries a higher level of risk, doesn't it? In those midland areas, on that heavier soil as we've seen, and also the difference in rainfall between west and east. As you get if you go east of the A1, the rainfall levels are far lower. So actually, whilst we've got great export opportunities, the domestic market, also keen to support barley production in this part of the world because it gives them a great geographical spread, and that's something we've worked quite hard at over the years, and got some great relationships and supply contracts to go east. You've got malting barley exports, and of course we've got the A303, the trunk road into the West Country with very large feed barley demand. So as a crop, it ticks a lot of boxes.
I think we're going to need the support in marketing this year's big crop twofold. One is to make sure that we get enough out competitively before the end of December.
Yeah.
Depending on what happens, but at this moment, that's what we're working to. And then likewise with the big crop, I can see and the potential of a small crop next year. The maltsters will actually want to buy more of this crop to carry into next crop. Yeah. But then you've got to be prepared to hold on to it for that bit longer as well. Yeah. So push as much out early as possible.
Yeah.
And then be prepared to hold it otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Provided you've got quality.
Provided you've got the quality.
Great. Well, I think we've touched on a few points. Obviously, it's a great shame that we couldn't do any more with this fantastic site that is so kindly hosted by Matthew. A great thanks to Syngenta for all the work they've done. As always, all the results, we'll take these plots through to harvest. We've got all the varieties, all the pertinent varieties, different seed dressings, different seed rates. We've got a nitrogen trial and a growth regulator trial. So Ian Hamilton of Syngenta will be collating all that information and building up this portfolio that we've built up over the years. And we hope that we'll be able to run our usual December annual malting barley conference. But again, we'll see how the precautions fit as we get towards the end of the year. So as I say, great thanks to Matthew. Best of luck with the harvest.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll be back again this time next year. Great thanks also to Mike for all your hard work over the last few years, for all your comments today, and all the markets you're going to find us this
year.
Post-Brexit and for crop 21.
Got some sold already.
Exactly. So all is not lost, and I have to say, if there's one great thing to be optimistic about, it is our world-leading malting barley industry with farmers merchants, dare I say, ourselves included, brewers, distillers. We really have a crop that is wanted around the world. And yes, we're going to have to go with the ebb and flow of the global market, but you know, it is a very, very reliable crop thanks to the efforts of plant breeders. Some very interesting stuff coming forward. So you know, we are full of optimism about the future. So thank you very much indeed for taking the time to watch. Thank you again for everybody involved, and wish you a very best of luck with a hopefully dry and straightforward harvest. Thank you.